Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. I'm Matt.
I'm Eric.
And if we randomly break out into song, don't panic. It's just because we spent a little too much time at
Don't
Arkham Asylum.
don't worry, I won't.
I kind of wish the characters in our primary film this week, Joker Full of Dew, had not also broken into song. I didn't mind Lady Gaga singing, but Joaquin Phoenix, Brendan Gleeson, they gave it their good old college try. I would consider that great singing. But this week, as we launch into October, the clown has appeared or reappeared, as it may be. Joker Full of Dew comes from director Todd Phillips, who gave us the first Joker film in 2019, which gained some critical acclaim, won an Academy Award for star Joaquin Phoenix, who played Arthur Fleck. Man who spent his professional career dressing as a party clown and his personal life living through a set of horrors, failed largely by the system and his parents, and struggling with a great deal of mental illness and trauma. Decides, well, I don't know if he decides or if he just snaps. Killed a whole bunch of people, including one on live television that somehow made him a hero to the masses. If you've heard me talk about it, you know I was not a fan of the first film for a lot of reasons, most prominently because I thought the way it handled a very important subject was poor. This sequel that I guess they said this was kind of a studio inspired sequel because they did so well with the first one, and it definitely feels like a movie that no one had an intention of making, and they were like, oh, let's try some things. Takes place 2 years later. Arthur Fleck is in Arkham. He's heavily medicated. He's still got a lot of struggles, and he's awaiting his potential trial. His lawyer, Catherine Keener, is trying to make sure he gets the help he needs and not get lost in the system again. Part of their defense is that the Joker is an alternate personality as a defense mechanism to years of unmitigated trauma. They don't explore that a lot because in these movies, why would you bother exploring anything that might be an important or timely topic? Instead, apparently, he's doing so well that they put him in with the minimum security patients to do some song therapy, which, yeah, sure, that's a thing. And there he meets Lee, played by Lady Gaga, who um, has some issues of her own, but also is deeply fascinated by him, claiming to have seen the TV movie made about his life at least 20 times. And they develop a connection that leads to a vivid life of the mind for Arthur again, that parlays into warring strategies at his trial and a lot of warring, probably for audiences that did not realize that this sequel would be a musical. I don't know if it's fair to totally call it a musical. It doesn't completely launch into a musical the way you would expect, but there is a lot of singing. This movie runs about 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's also courtroom drama with the least inspiring actor ever cast as Harvey Dent. Um, I am giving this actually thumbs neutral, which is a big step up. For me, I hated the first one. I didn't really like this. It has not done well with critics or audiences, and I think that's fair. I did think the performances from Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga were both really good, and were probably the only thing that helps keep this watchable, because a lot of it feels like a weird mess. And in fact, I mean, sometimes I thought Todd Phillips was so in love with some slow mo shots that he was doing a Michael Bay homage. Um, it didn't always fit. I still think this movie has some horrendous flaws when it comes to handling a very important subject. But I am curious to see, right now the Rotten Tomatoes score is 38%, the audience score is 37%. So, uh, in this election season, it's nice to see that our combined hate has brought us all together against this
Except Ricky.
cracking to really fall below expectations. I still think I ended up getting, neutral and about 2.5 stars, which is a lot of an improvement from the first one. Which
Mm.
I thought this one was just poorly made.
Well, I'm giving it a thumbs down. Sorry, Ricky, who's standing here in the comments talking all about how people are Broncos fans and flawed and all this kind of stuff. But I will tell you, I would actually flip that to a thumbs up if they had made one change in the movie. And that would be
Firing Todd Phillips.
well, maybe I'll get to that. But have the now I might have missed this, but I know Arthur Fleck doesn't have any money. Is that a state appointed attorney, Catherine Keener?
I mean, it's probably is. They don't really
Appointed?
go into
They don't really describe it, but
their connection.
she is bizarrely the most she is the most unrealistically obsessive attorney. I can't think of a time in history that I've ever seen on like a crime TV show or anything where the attorney is so like impassioned about the mental health of someone in the 70s that she's going to go out of her way to try and convince the client to use her defense and try and carry the whole thing on her shoulders. And the problem is, maybe I could like, what cash is gonna grab?
It feels like she is just really invested in Arthur, because a lot of her comments are about
right, but
trying
like
to help
so
him,
invested.
and she's also kind of seems like she's also a little bit disgusted by the system, which you get a little bit into that. It's obviously not a great prison situation. Those guards are pretty.
But here's the thing: multiple personality disorder was almost barely discovered at this point, and so you're talking about someone who is like, oh, this psychiatrist who did all this medical testing and found nothing wrong with him. You have missed this discovery that I am also on the cusp of, that I've done. And here's the thing: the problem is it is so easy to fix. And it gives Harley Quinn a much more substantial role and reason to be in the movie. And like, I'm fine with the logic of why she's there and what she means to Arthur, and I'm fine with everything with Arthur's story. But they pull this twist on you, which I'm only going to spoil this part. I'm not going to spoil the ending, even though I really like the ending, and I'll get to that. Harley Quinn has voluntarily checked herself into an asylum and is in fact from money, has in fact studied psychiatry. If you had the plot of this movie be that he has a state appointed attorney that is a part of the system that is failing him, and you have Harley Quinn call it, hey, this attorney isn't doing you any favors, she's making everybody laugh at you, you need to be Joker, you need to make it a point that Joker is who you really are. And she starts to give him the idea that Joker is a different person and a different personality, and she makes him pitch that himself because she is the psychiatrist that is doing that. And then you have him start doing what he does in court, and then with Puddles on the stand, he can't go through with this and he falls. And that, like, I understand that these are characters that you're not supposed to, they're supposed to be crazy or whatever. They're not supposed to follow the logic, but you had something right there that could have made things so much more cohesive.
Well, I think it's supposed to be an irony too that Arthur has been so abused and put upon in his life that he can't recognize the difference between somebody who genuinely cares about him and somebody who is purely manipulating him. Because that's the irony there. That attorney doesn't want to be in a relationship with him, but does seem to genuinely care about him and getting him the help he needs. Whereas it's pretty clear that Lee is just a user and manipulator. and
which
he
is
just
an
can't
interesting flip.
see that. Well, and I there are really there are some really good and fascinating moments in the film. That's probably part of the frustration for me. I was about to go a lot lower, and then
Puddles.
his no, the puddle scene is fine, but it's actually his closing statement when he gets up there. That honestly, if that's not Joaquin Phoenix's Oscar reel clip,
Yeah.
then they really don't know what they're doing, because that was some of the best moments in the film and some of the best. But then you followed up with weird things like the explosion, which the only payoff to that was that final sequence on the stairs of, the stairs as a visual representation were sort of where he kind of was made in the first
Mm,
film, his dramatic dancing down the stairs, and where he is completely unmade at the
yep.
end of the second film when he catches up with her and
What
she
can
puts
I
a
ask you,
cigarette out on his dreams.
was the shot of the two of them kicking like he did in the first movie from the trailer actually in the movie?
I don't think so. Going down the
Yeah,
courthouse
no.
stairs, yeah, there was something, but I mean, often the disconnect between marketing and
Yeah, yeah.
everything is a big
Yeah, sorry,
a
I didn't
big
mean to
part of
derail. Yeah.
the negative reaction to this has been a ton of people getting up and walking out, not realizing it's a musical. And we're so close to things. We read about things like I knew, because from reading about the project, but I started thinking the ads and stuff don't necessarily clue you in that it would be a musical. And I well, it's not a musical in the sense that it's well done, because it's not well done at all. Uh,
I mean, it definitely pauses for people to sing a lot, and that did drive me crazy.
well, so, and I probably would have been more into it if they originally, it looked like they were kind of using the musical and the Life of the Mind singing as part of his like fantasy world. And that
Mm.
actually would have made some great sense because of where they met and because of the therapy they were going through. But then you weren't crazy, you weren't able to totally tell, like when he's doing that TV interview with
Mm.
Patty,
Steve Coogan.
and he starts singing. I'm like, is this going to end up being another one of those things that was in his mind? But no, apparently that was real.
Right.
Um, and there were other times where he just breaks out into song in his life. So there wasn't a lot of consistency in the way it was used. And I think it would have been interesting if like the part of his life was musical, or even when they start that fire and they get caught at the gate.
Yeah.
I had perceived a lot of that as supposed to be part of like the larger than life in his mind, but when they're in his trial, they talk about when you tried to escape and that girl was just singing all around you. I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was lit. So
Although I could have done without the entire musical thing. I kind of like the idea of
I
what they
think
were trying to do,
it
but
was a big
the
swing that
execution.
doesn't totally work,
Yeah.
but I don't think it was a
Oh, but one
terrible.
thing I wanted to make a point to say, it's almost a shame the way this movie ended, because this movie is so disinterested in having anything to do with Batman, except it wants to remind you constantly that this is Gotham City and Harvey Dent is Harvey Dent, and it wants to like throw names at you, even though these characters are acting nothing like their comic book counterparts, and this is a completely fine job. Like again, the role the
Well,
role
as far as we
reversal.
know, in the world that they inhabit, there is no such thing as Batman. There's no
Well, we know
reference.
from the Bruce Wayne, his parents got shot in the first movie. He was there. So he's just like becoming he's like growing up right now. It's been 2 years since his parents got shot. He's probably being raised by Alfred and getting ready to go off and do his martial arts training. And that's why Harvey Dent is so young, and that's why they're, have this ending the way that it ends, which I thought another thing that I thought was borderline genius about this movie was the Warner Brothers cartoon opening that very concisely teases you with what is going to happen through the whole movie. And it gives so much context to Arthur's experience and his relationship with Joker. But it's kind of a shame for me because honestly, a character like Batman would be this Joker's arch nemesis, hands down, and I would love to see it. Because a vigilante who believes justice is just beating people but not killing them and running away, and then putting them back into Arkham and the systems that keep destroying them. That is someone who has taken everything evil in Arthur Fleck's life and calls it justice and keeps throwing it at him and everyone who acts like him. That is an incredibly fascinating dynamic that would be set up. And it's just a shame that this movie really has like no interest in ever exploring that. And man, there's just everything about this movie is so like, oh man, what a really great idea that could have been.
It's going to be interesting, I think, to see what happens in terms of award season too, because the first one obviously did fairly well, getting nominations, one for Joaquin Phoenix. I almost think he's better in this movie, but the reaction has been so, I made joke early in the week that the spread of scores was looking a little bit like Megalopolis, but I think there are fewer defenders of this movie than there are even of Megalopolis, which is really saying something. And it's a shame. I think both primary stars, Ricky obviously agrees, will not be nominated for anything. I think it's a shame because both primary stars should be in the mix, but unless it bounces back a little bit off of that first wave, the reaction has been so overwhelmingly negative, which I guess makes me an outlier again because I didn't love this movie, but I didn't hate it like I hated the first one.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of
wait, one real quick thing. I will just say, I don't want to say what the ending is, but I loved the ending for taking the idea of everyone's like internet culture dream of Joker and kind of sticking with a little bit of reality and a little bit of a undercut. I don't want to explain it too much, but like I really liked the ending. I just wish it had been a little different here and there. Yeah.
Well, speaking of films that are remakes or re-expansions of existing IP, we are going to look at
everything.
One of the streaming. Last week I commented we had 4 theatrical releases and 5 streaming films. This week we have 5 theatrical releases and 4 streaming films. So we're going to look at one of those streaming films, and that is Salem's Lot, which has debuted just in time for the spooky season. Is another adaptation of the famous Stephen King novel. This is now the 3rd iteration of this film. It's a little bit different. This one was always set to be a one-off film. It was originally going to go into theaters. The first version came out in 1979, was a 2-part mini-series. They remade it as a 2-part mini-series on TNT in 2004, a version that had Rob Lowe and Andre Braugher and Donald Sutherland. But in 2021...
Stephen King is alive. What are you talking?
Yeah, Stephen King is alive and actually has been agitating, had seen this completed version, has been agitating for it to come out for a while. It was shot in 2021 and had an early 2022 theatrical release date. It got pulled off of the theatrical release schedule and kind of was in limbo for a long time during the writer and actor strike last year. Max talked about needing more original content for the streaming channel, and so finally it got a release date after a lot of agitation by those involved in the production, including Stephen King. They wanted it to come out. So now it has come out just in time for this Halloween season. It features Lewis Pullman as writer Ben Mears, who in 1975 comes back to what was kind of, I guess, his hometown, a place that he lived for a few years until some tragic circumstances with his parents. It's set in 1975. The town's name is Jerusalem's Lot, but they call it Salem's Lot for short. There he connects with a young woman named Susan. They develop a relationship. He makes friends with an aging school teacher named Matt, played by Bill Camp. And things are going okay, but then some weird things happen. Some kids start missing, some people start dying, and it becomes clear that there is some kind of supernatural evil in the town. Turns out they've got a vampire problem that Ben and his friends then have to deal with. I was interested in this. You know, there are a lot of, I think Salem's Lot was greenlit as a theatrical production kind of in the wake of It and It Chapter 2, and maybe
Sure.
renewed interest in some of Stephen King's earlier novels being adapted into feature films. It has a pretty decent cast. I mentioned Lewis Pullman. I mentioned Bill Camp. Alfre Woodard is also in this. John Benjamin Hickey. There are some good actors and stuff in here. I like the setup. You know, a lot of Stephen King's works take place in these small kind of New England towns. A lot of it is about building mood and things like that. And then you kind of get into the crux of the story. There were things about this I liked. I'm going to end up giving it thumbs neutral. I didn't think it was, I have to figure out where my camera is. I didn't think it ended up being incredible. I thought it was a fine watch. It kind of made sense to me why they moved it to streaming. I don't know if it would have been a theatrical event film. I don't know if it has the same kind of following exactly, or the same kind of visuals that will draw you in, like the terrifying clown from It. But I thought this was an enjoyable watch. You can actually stream this, and you can stream the original and the 1980s sequel, Return to Salem's Lot. They're all streaming on Max as part of their spooky October. I liked it for what it is. I didn't think it was great.
Okay, literally coming out of a movie that I thought was like bloated and couldn't get its point across in like a decent amount of time, because I watched Joker and this at the same day. Like, this movie was the exact opposite. It wouldn't linger on anything and went as fast as possible through the story. But the production design is there, the direction is on point, the performances across the board I really enjoyed. There are some great actors in there. I love Lewis Pullman. I'm Bad Times at the El Royale, Top Gun, all this, everything I've seen him in. I really, even The Strangers Pray at Night. Like, I don't know. Like, obviously he's in shape now to be in the Thunderbolts, Marvel's Thunderbolts. So I thought that was a little jarring to see him suddenly all buff. But
but this movie was shot 3 years ago, so
Thunderbolts. Well, I guess Thunderbolts.
They didn't even know they were making Thunderbolts when they shot this movie.
No, they did. It was on the schedule, and he would have been like, because Thunderbolts has been bumped back a couple of times, but I do think they didn't start shooting it until last year. Yeah. But whatever. Point is, everything is here in this movie. We just didn't get enough of it to become more emotionally invested. This is a pretty solid thumbs up for me. I thought it was great for the season. I thought, I literally just wanted more of almost everything that was going on in the movie. The only thing that stuck out to me as being like a little bit too odd and out of place was I don't know the actor's name, but Euron Greyjoy.
You know what? Oh, I actually liked Pillow Asbeck. I didn't think they built him up enough. I thought he was
again, he could have done more.
I think Lewis Pullman was bulked up because this was about when he was going to shoot Top Gun Maverick. That's how old this is, because Thunderbolt shot last May. I just looked it up, but he's in Top Gun Maverick, where he would have been a Navy pilot, and I'm pretty sure they had some like
sequence. I just remember him being the one with glasses, like the scrawnier one out of the rest of them, but still he had to be in shape for that like beach scene or whatever they
where they're playing
yeah
football.
yeah so yeah, like I just man, like darn, it's a shame that this movie didn't have more favor, because I think it really it took, and I've seen the 979 miniseries. This could have been way worse. Like, I'm not saying that miniseries is bad, but it definitely like drags. And there's like, I think with a lot of Stephen King adaptations, like the source material, there's all these places where there are weaker and stronger parts of the book, and he writes at a million miles an hour, and so he doesn't always have the best dialogue, and he has like all this silliness going on. And I think it's easy to screw up an adaptation of a Stephen King story. I mean, the so many things have been made out of his works, and a decent percentage of them are considered bad by most people. And to have this be so cohesive and so, I'm using that word too much today, um just like have a streamlined good grip on what the scary parts of the story are and what the meat of the story is. I Yeah, I also super awesome was on board with the little kid being like the hero of the movie. I thought that was great.
Yeah, and it would be funny to see him do press for this, because he definitely looks like a little kid, but kids, 3.5 years, I would imagine that he looks quite different now from where they shot this movie. So, but if you're looking for a just a nice streaming watch for the season, this was probably, we had three streamers drop three kind of spooky films all on Thursday for the for kickstarting the month of October. This was probably my favorite of them. There was House of Spoils,
Hmm.
which had good aesthetics, but ultimately doesn't go a lot of places on Prime Video, and Hold Your Breath, which was a Dust Bowl set kind of horror story with Sarah Paulson and Evan Moss Barack in on Hulu. So kind of they're all coming. Looks like there's a whole other set of them. We get a M. Night Shyamalan produced straight to streaming one on Max next Thursday. So it is getting to be the season where you can find a lot of streaming kind of spooky season films. And I thought this one did a pretty good job. Some of them are a mixed bag or really disappointing. I thought it was enjoyable. I just don't know, for me, like how memorable it would be
Yeah.
coming back. And I do, along with you, wonder if, so even though they didn't make it a mini series, they realized that they needed to make two full theatrical films if they wanted it. And I almost wonder if this would have been, I think the best things from Stephen King are the ones where they've allowed them to be long form. And so maybe all the effort to try to take a story that in the past has worked best as a mini series played out over several hours, and to squeeze it into a 2-hour time frame potentially for a theatrical release might have been a disservice to the material, especially with the cast and what they've uh, gathered up here. But so at least you got, you were kind of split. What did you, I might have missed it. Did you give
Oh, I'm a thumbs up. Yeah, I'm a pretty solid thumbs up. Honestly, I just think this would have been elevated by more of like everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there was potential, and that's one of the things I think when Stephen King was agitating for it to get a release date, because he wanted people to see it because they thought they did a nice job. Last week we introduced a little, some other things that are out there that maybe have seen and liked, and I have a couple I thought I'd throw out there. I've mentioned we have just a glut of movies coming out right now. So I'm going to give you one other one that I liked streaming and one that I liked in theaters. The first one I'm going to mention is a streaming one. This is a documentary that got a limited theatrical release. It's called Casa Bonita, Mi Amor. It is now streaming on Paramount Plus. It dropped this week, and it is a documentary about the rebuilding of a restaurant called Casa Bonita, which is in Denver, Colorado. That has always been renowned as kind of the Disneyland of Mexican restaurants. It has a
Okay.
big pool with cliff divers. It has a lot of animatronics and plays and characters and theater. It was a staple of the Denver area that was first opened in 1974, and it had fallen into a complete state of disrepair a few years ago until it was purchased by Trey Parker and Matt Stone,
Oh,
who are the creators of South Park, who are Colorado residents who grew up going to Casa Bonita and wanted to save it. And this documentary really goes through the process. They were hoping that it was going to be like a couple $1,000,000 to renovate. It ended up costing more than $32 million. They
huh.
had to completely reconstruct the building, and you go through all the things they found and all the struggles. I have lived in Colorado for 12 years, and I didn't grow up here, but everyone has a story about Casa Bonita, and watching the process kind of play out over the news about rebuilding and all the interest in how it was going to open, and more than 400,000 people have gone through in the year since it opened. They only
Oh,
have like this strict, you have to get on a waiting list for reservations and stuff, but this movie is just beautiful and really entertaining and engaging, really emotional. Uh, just a really fun journey with Trey Parker and Matt Stone too
that's
through this
awesome.
process and the people they have working on it behind the scenes and this labor of love to really, I mean, yes, it's a business, but what they did is more like a gift for the people of their home state returning it because, I don't know how long it's going to take for even the best restaurant to return like a $34 million investment in the infrastructure. But it was a lot of fun. People here have really loved it, and now with it being on Paramount Plus, I would encourage you to check that out. And my theatrical one, this is another one that's been long gestating. It's a movie called White Bird, and that might sound familiar to you because I believe it's been 2 or 3 years that we've seen trailers for this movie coming out because it was shot a long time ago as well. In 2017, we had a movie called Wonder that was based on a novel that had Owen Wilson and Julia Roberts as the parents of a little kid that had um, some challenges and the way he tried to gain acceptance and become a star at his school. Well, an offshoot of that is he's kind of tormented by a kid in his school who is a real bully who ends up getting expelled. Well, this is a follow-up novel, and originally they were tying these two. They were tying, they called it White Bird, a wonder story. And they if you find the original theatrical trailer for this, they have scenes from that movie Wonder as kind of a lead-in. You don't really have had to see the first one to watch this one, but you follow the kid who was the bully as he goes to his new school. And he tells his grandmother, played by Helen Mirren, that what he learned after having to leave his last school is that he should just keep his head down and not get noticed. And it rankles her. She says, you didn't leave your last school. You got kicked out for being cruel.
Oh,
And I think now I need to tell you a story about my past. And most of this story is a flashback to the time when his grandmother was a Jew, a young Jewish girl living in France during World War II. And the way that a boy in her school showed her kindness and helped to save her life as she avoided the Holocaust and the Nazi occupation. And it's also about the inspiration and namesake for her grandson, which was a boy named Julian in this. So a lot of it is, set during that World War II time period. Gillian Anderson is in here. And the story was we've seen a lot of these kind of World War II stories, and it kind of starts out feeling a little bit familiar, and a lot of it is well done, but feels familiar. But it was really that last act of this movie that tugs at the heartstrings and gets things going. And this was actually one of the screeners I watched this week. It opened opposite Joker. It's one of the 5, theatrical releases this week, and it was something that I ended up really enjoying a lot more than I expected. It had a long journey to the screen, kind of like Salem's Lot, but it is out now. And if you're looking for something a little bit different, I thought that was worth checking out.
Kick ass. All right.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of stuff going on now. There's gonna be a lot of releases next week too. Our primary focus is going to be Saturday Night, which is the biopic about the behind the scenes leading up to the first episode of Saturday Night Live, which turns 50 this year, from Jason Reitman. So I'm pretty excited about that. We'll see what else pops up, but do you have any other things you want to shout out before we roll on that?
I don't know. I'm just excited that we're in spooky season, so I'm mostly watching a lot of things that I've already seen before. I rewatched Sweeney Todd because it got a 4K release, and I've listened to the old Broadway production of that so much that it's a little bit weird going back to the Johnny Depp version at this point. But I adore that movie. Like, that's got me into that whole play and everything, and it's just, and it has a great upscale to 4K. Everything is dark and saturated, and blood is all bloody, and everything like really works with it. But yeah, no, just kind of, moving on through spooky season.
Well, and I think the takeaway from this week is, if you have a choice between going to see a clown at the theater or a vampire from your couch, the vampire might be the better option.
Yeah.
So until next week, when I'm looking forward to maybe a movie that might give us a few laughs.
Yeah, maybe.
It's been a heavy couple weeks here. Yeah, maybe. We'll see. Until next week, we will see you guys at the movies.